Hey, this is Wes McDermott, and welcome to another Unity Cookie video tutorial from our Q&A section. This question comes from a Unity Cookie member. His name is Dragon Byte on the forums, and he had a question about using custom trees in Unity. He had created his own tree and was having some issues with the rotation. So, for instance, when he was painting the tree here into the terrain, all of the trees were kind of laying down flat or laying about 90-degree rotation on the terrain itself. And then also he was having an issue where when he activated wind, the leaves were not being affected by the wind. So what I'm just going to show in this video is how you can actually create some custom trees and bring those in. And so I actually have some trees here. Real quick tree I modeled. I'll warn you now, this tree that I created is very terrible, but it'll get us through the video here and kind of explain what's going on. So as you can see right here, I've got a custom tree coming in, and there's some wind blowing here in the scene. So we're going to go through on how we need to go about doing this. So first off, let's just create a new scene, and we'll start from scratch here. I'm also going to just remove my tree that I had imported in. Let's get rid of everything. And I'm actually going to upload this scene file. So I've got this bark texture and just this leaf here, and I just went outside and took these just like really quick with my phone. But yeah, it'll get the point across. Okay, so first thing we're going to want to do real quick, let's just come over to our terrain and let's just create a terrain. So we have a terrain into our scene. Let's grab our main camera here and just slide it over for now, and let's just kind of push this in place here just so we kind of have something going on. And then let's also grab ourselves directional light in our scene, and let's just move it off to the side over here. So we've just got our main camera, directional light, and we have a terrain. Okay, so when you create trees from another program, so one of the things that Dragonbyte had mentioned in the forum thread was he had actually used Blender when he created that tree. So what I'm actually going to demo for you, I actually don't know Blender myself, so I'm going to do this in Maya. But the point is this is the exact same procedure that you would do in Blender, or let's say you're using 3ds Max or any other 3D program. This is going to be the exact same procedure. So never mind what 3D program I'm using. This will all come across. But what had happened in his case was that there were some rotations that were on the. I believe it was the X was at -90 and the Y was at 90, I think it was. And so the weird thing is when he would bring the tree, if you just take his tree and you just drag and drop into the scene, it looked fine. It was perfectly, there wasn't any rotation. It was perfectly fine. But when I started to paint it with the terrain, every time you would paint on the terrain, it would flip everything -90 over. So I'm not exactly 100% sure on what was going on there. I know that I brought the .blend file into the scene, and I think what happens with that, again, I'm not really great with my Blender knowledge, but I think what happens is Unity will export an FBX, I think, out of Blender and basically use that over. I think that's what it does. But anyways, from Blender, I went in and I created an FBX file, and I checked out that file in Maya, and there was a rotation issue, like I was telling you, -90 on the X and 90 on the Y. And although that wasn't showing up here, for some reason, like when I exported that FBX and brought that into Maya, I could see that rotation offset. And I think what was happening there was that even though if you just drag that into the scene, it looked fine, but for some reason painting it here into with the terrain editor, it was causing some rotations here. So I guess the point is when you're in your 3D program, just be careful about having some rotation values in here, because it looks like those are actually affected when you're painting with the terrain editor. So now let's just jump over real quick here to Maya, and I'm going to show you what I have here with this tree. So I just modeled this tree up really quick, and so what you need to do to get this to work is you need to have, if you take a look at this guy, we'll go back. I have basically a trunk, so I've got the trunk and the limbs here, and then I have like these leaves, okay? And so if I select this, you can see that the leaves are just simple polygons. So if we go into like a face selection mode, you can see that what I have here is just a simple, it's like a billboard, a simple polygon face that then has a texture map to it. So that's all that the leaves are. And then the geometry here, and this is pretty dense for a tree, I guess, but the geometry here is just actual full 3D geometry for this tree. And so what you need to do to get this to work for a custom tree is basically there's two rules to follow. So if you'll notice here, I have one single object. Okay, and first off, I'm gonna just hit my move tool here, and you can see that my move tool, this is basically my pivot point. So in whatever 3D program you're painting in, just go ahead and make sure that you set your pivot at the base of your tree. So you can see that we've done that here. Now, this is a single object. It's actually made up of multiple objects. It's not all a self-contained object, but it's still well, it is all one single object, but you can see that it's made up of these leaves and then the trunk objects. But what I want to point out with this is if we come over and we take a look at my translate and rotation channels here, they're all zeroed out. So in whatever 3D program you're using, number one, make sure that your pivot's at the base, and then also any type of movement or anything like you do, be sure that you freeze or make sure all these channels here, so your translate and your rotates, are all zeroed out before you actually export this guy. So what I've done for this tree is you can see that this is like a default grid here in mine. You can see that this guy was created right here, and I snapped him to the center origin, so everything's zeroed out, and there was rotation. There were some rotation values after I kind of moved things around, but then I just went on ahead and just make sure that I froze these channels so everything's all zeroed out. So we've got the pivot, and then we got the channel zeroed out. So the next thing I was talking about was, even though this is one self-contained object, if we go into face mode, you can see I can actually double click to select this polygon shell. So we've got the trunk. I've got some the limbs here separate, and then I can also click through here and just all the leaves. You can see that it's not all like welded to one piece of geometry. It is separate, polygon shells, but the main thing is that it's all combined. And here, we'll just undo this real quick. Probably shouldn't have moved all that, but there we go. You can see that it's actually all one item. So we've got leaves and we've got tree. Now the other thing is that I want to showcase is that even though this is one item, you can see that I obviously have two materials applied to that guy. So with this object selected, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to Maya's material editor. So when I bring that up, we can see that I've got a leaves material and then I have a bark material. So there's two materials here, and each material is assigned to a set of faces. So if we were to, real quick, I'm going to bring open Maya's material editor here, and I'm just going to kind of graph my network. So let's just come down here and graph this network here, and just bring this open here so you can see these materials part of here. So if we were to go ahead and take a look at, let's say, the leaves, I'm going to select these leaves, and then I'm going to select objects with the material. You can see that this is like basically setting a polygon tag or a polygon ID for this material. So even though this is one single mesh object made up of multiple polygon shells, the leaves are one separate selection. So you can see that by just the leaves is basically just selecting the leaf polygons. It's not selecting anything else. So I guess if we take a step back with all this, we got the three rules here. Is we've got our object, the leaves, and the geometry that makes up the leaves, and the geometry that makes up the bark and the tree limbs and the trunk and all that stuff. That's a separate object. We zero out all our channels, we set our pivot to the center or the bottom of the tree, and then we assign ourselves two separate materials, one for the leaves and one for everything else. So now we've got these two materials. So once this tree was set up, what I did was I exported this tree back over to Unity as an FBX. So now let's jump back over into Unity. And well, here, let's do that again because I actually deleted it. So let's just export this guy, and I'm going to throw this into the assets folder. So we'll just call this UC for Unity Cookie Tree and export. So now this tree is going to be here into my Unity project. I'm going to select it real quick. I need to set my scale factor because of the way Maya works. So for instance, I know that with Maya objects working at its default unit system, it needs to be 1. Your 3D application could be different there. So now we have this tree, okay? And so let's just drag and drop this tree into our scene, and I'll just hit the F key to focus it. Now it's kind of sitting off way into space. You can see that I've got X values here. So let's just click this little gear icon and say reset, and that's going to snap that all to 0. So now I'm going to hit F again to kind of focus this tree, and I'm going to zoom in on it. We're just going to set this guy up. So you can see that I got my tree selected. So if we look at this in the hierarchy, you can see that it's one item. It has a transform. There is a mesh renderer for this one item, so one mesh render for this item. And if we click the materials, you can see that it says 2, and there are 2 materials, a bark and a leaf. So, and here's our two materials that we see. And then right here, we've got the two materials. So what we want to do, and this actually, I've already set this up once, so it looks like it came in this way. But what I want to point out, and this is the next very important thing to see about this, is that we've got this leaf shader here. And we got, excuse me, this leaf material, and it has a shader, and the shader is called Nature Tree Soft Occlusion Leaf. So it's very important that if you want the wind to affect your leaves, you have to use this Tree Soft Occlusion Leaf shader. And the reason for that is in how the shader works. So where did I get this shader to start? So in case you didn't know that, you can go over to your assets and just do a import package, and it's getting cut off here in the screen capture. So let's just pull this window all the way up more. And let's take a look at this again. So import package. It's still getting cut off. Sorry about this. Well, here, I'll tell you what it says. If we do import package and we kind of scroll all the way down, right below, see you got your tessellation shaders, and then there's another thing here called Tree Creator. So just import in Tree Creator. And what that's going to do is it's going to, here are my standard assets, you can see that we have the Tree Creator, and if we look at this guy, you can see that we're going to have some materials and textures, and it even comes with some trees that we can play around with here. So here's our tree textures and stuff. And then here we can actually select, and you can see how they've kind of set up their tree. To work with this, so we could have done just, it's best to probably just do one texture, and in my case, just being really quick, I broke this guy into two textures. This is not optimized at all, but just to kind of show you the way that Unity does this is they'll have one texture, and then they'll have, the leaves are over here. So what I could have done was just, moved my UVs off to the sides here so that I could use one texture sheet for both of these. But in this case, I didn't do that, so know that, not very optimized to use two, but it'll work for this demo here. And so what that's also going to do by importing in that asset, it's going to give us the shaders that we need. And so like I said, when I imported this guy, it just came in with some default shaders. So what I ended up doing was I went over here to the shader, dropped this guy down, and then now I have this nature section. And in the nature category here, I have two of these shaders that I want to use. One is leaves and one is bark. And so when I first set these guys, you're going to have some settings so you can actually adjust the alpha cutoff, so you can see that this kind of trims the leaves, so to speak. Then you've got the base light here, so how much lighting you want to have on this. This ambient occlusion, sometimes you might want to watch this. So for instance, on the bark, this guy was turned all the way up, so when I first apply this, it may look like this, and so you'll be like, oh, what's going on? Even I have lights, it's all dark. Just know that it's got this ambient occlusion setting here, and you may need to just pull this all the way down, depending on your geometry, but now you can see it and it works fine. Okay, so that tree is already set for us, so we don't really need this in our scene. We can actually remove this guy, and we'll just focus this back up. And now we're actually going to paint some trees on here, so let's do that. Let's come over to, we've got our terrain selected. I'm going to come over to the terrain. I'm going to click the button for the trees, and now it's asking me to place some trees. We have no trees defined, so let's do that now. Let's click the Edit Trees button, Add Tree. And now I get this dialog here where it's asking me for a tree. So we do have a tree. Let's just left click, drag and drop this guy right on here. And now if you want this tree to actually work, or actually, animate when the wind is blowing, when you have a wind zone going, you need to change your bend factor. So let's just check this, let's just set this up to something like, say, 25. And now I'm just going to click add. And so here in this window area here, you can see that it gives me a tree that I can work with. So now we get a little preview here, and now you can see here in the viewport my brush is working, so we can pull the size up on this, maybe pull our tree density down. Let's adjust our tree height. I don't know, we'll just set some of this crazy variation stuff here if we want. And then what I can do is I can just start painting in some trees here. So I'm just going to throw some trees down, make a little forest. And that'll be good. So as we start to kind of zoom in, you can see that here's all my trees, and they're set up. So now let's come over here to our main camera, and let's set up our camera again. So I'm just going to kind of dolly this guy into place. Just kind of zoom it in so we can really kind of see some of these trees up close here. There we go. That looks pretty good. So you can see here in our camera view that we have our tree. So now we've got our trees on our terrain. We've got our camera in place. Let's go ahead and add some wind to this. So what I'm going to do for this, I'm just going to do a game object. I'm going to create an empty object here. And let's just name this real quick to wind. So this is our wind. We'll focus our terrain back again. Let's kind of zoom in on this guy. let's take this wind and we're going to add a component to it. So I'm going to click the Add Component button. I'm going to come down to Miscellaneous, and then I'm going to choose Wind Zone. And it's setting it directional. I don't know. Let's just try that and see what's going on here. So start to just focus this guy here. I've got these positional values. This is all kind of offset here. So now I'm just hitting F again to scale that back up. And let's just move, and I like to just kind of move the wind zone here close to the trees that we want to affect. Get this guy in place here. Now we can go ahead and hit play on this. And we're not going to see anything yet. So we'll adjust our wind main here. And you can see that it's starting to affect some of these trees as we start to zoom in and out. And it has this is kind of tied to the clipping in the viewport here. So what I'm going to do, instead of having this as directional, let's do a spherical. And let's just adjust our radius. And let's just put this into the radius of where we can see it affect some of these trees here. And we'll pull this radius up pretty high. And let's adjust our main down here. Let's just do something like maybe 0.25. Let's see, I think this is probably a lot. Yeah, see, it's affecting some of those. Let's pull our wind turbulence down. Let's really adjust that wind there. Okay, so you can see that for the area that it's working towards. Let's see, let's put this up real big. You can see that it's starting to affect these trees here, and that these trees are moving here in the wind. So something else I want to show you is, like, notice that we have the tree trunks are moving, and then we also have the leaves themselves are moving. So right here in this corner, you can see here that these leaves are moving. Now you don't see the ones in the background moving, because what it does is it depends on the size and everything, but it's only affecting certain trees. So as I move it back more this way, I think we might be able to see it maybe from where our camera is. Nope. Let's see, let's move in here a little bit. So now you can see that it's affecting this certain area. So it's just performance-wise, if it's closer to, basically think about where your camera is going to be. So as we start to kind of move our camera through here, you're going to see that, as I start to, traverse through my scene, you can see where it's actually, these trees are being affected by the wind as I get close. So all these other ones back here are not going to be animating. And that has a lot to do with the way the shader is involved so much in how this wind effect is working. So you can see as I start to pull back away, or as I get whatever's basically closer in my viewport at a certain distance, are the trees that are actually going to get affected by the wind. So these trees off in the distance that are far, we're not actually going to see that effect. So the next important thing I want to talk about is about the leaves. So how do we get the leaves to work? Getting the tree, like the trunk, to actually work with the wind is easy enough, but it's the leaves that get kind of tricky. And so I've got another quick example here. So I took our same tree, went in and changed, this time, the material shader. I just changed it straight to the just diffuse, your standard diffuse, and then I colored it red. Okay, so the shader is no longer using this Nature Tree Soft Occlusion shader here. So remember before we came down to Nature and we were using this Tree Soft Occlusion leaves. So when we go ahead and hit play on this now, and I want you to look here in a viewport, you can see that the trees are animating with wind, but now the leaves are not. And notice that the leaves are just kind of stuck here in space, like they're not doing anything. They're just kind of just frozen there. And so if I want to fix that, and let's say that I come back to the nature and I do these leaves again. Let's see if this will reset for us here. We might have to go to our terrain here and just hit edit tree. There we go. Just kind of a little reset there. And now I hit play. Now you can see that our leaves are working for us. So that shows that the important part of getting the leaves to work or be affected by the wind, it all comes down to this shader that we're using. So it's very important that you have this shader. So what's the deal? Why does this shader do this? Okay, so the way the way this wind works here in Unity is this shader, the animation is actually happening at a shader level. So there is code here, or there's shader code in this tree soft occlusion leaf shader, that what it's doing is it's actually animating the position of the vertices, and it's tied to the way, and basically it's tied to, or this effect is driven by the layout of the UVs. So if really quick, if we jump back here over to Maya, and what I'm going to do is let's just open up my texture window. So here's my UV texture editor, and I'll grab this guy, and let me just select, let's see, let me just select a couple items here. What I'm doing is I'm just selecting all of the trunk and the limbs and things like that. I just kind of want to isolate these guys and get these out of the way. So let me just invert my selection here, and now isolate this. So now you can see what we have here. Whoops, let me undo that again. You can see what we have is just our leaf selected. Now in the UV texture editor, what I want to do is I'm going to just maximize this guy, and we're going to take a look at the UVs here. And so what we have is these UVs. Okay, and so like I said, the shader tree, or that shader, is actually animating the vertex positions. So the vertex positions on these polygon leaves here. But it's done so based off the UV coordinates. So what the shader does is it looks at the UVs and it decides, it basically creates like a ramp. Okay, so in UV space, we got, and you can see here in Maya the way that you can actually see these numbers here. So it starts at 0 here in the corner, and as we move to the we'll say as we move to the right here, you can see that we're going from 0 all the way up to 1. So that's basically our U coordinate. And then if we start at the bottom again and we move upwards, you can see we're going from 0 to 1, and that's our V chord. So what this shader does is it takes a look at the UV for each one of these mesh items, and it says, okay, well, I'm going to take, basically based off how these UVs are laid out, and everything that's at 0 across the V chord, those vertices that are basically the vertices that are tied to those UV coordinates, they're going to get 0 animation. I'm not going to animate that. And then as we start to move up our V coordinate in UV space, so here 0.3, 0.5, so if you look at 0.5, the vertices are basically around, so in the case of this, you can see that we've got an edge loop right here and one right here, and so these guys are going to get about, if we look at between 0.3 and this up here is around 0.7, so they're going to get a blend of 0.7 to 0.3% animation. And then as we get all the way up here to 1, these positions here at 1 are getting 100% animation. So think of it just as like a gradient map going from, I guess we'll say this is black, and then it transitions all the way up to white. So everywhere there's white, it's going to get 100% animation through the shader, and everywhere that's black, or basically 0 on our V coordinate, is going to get 0 animation. So again, what that shader's doing is it's taking each one of these mesh items here, so we'll say one of these leaves. If we take a look at this leaf here, we'll scroll in on here and you look at the polygons I'm highlighting. So it's going to take the vertices that are part of all these faces here, and it's just animating those vertices, again, based off the UVs. So since these vertices down here at the bottom, here, let's pick a better example here. So as soon as I do that, you can see that it's showing all the UVs, so it makes it a little bit difficult to see. But here, we'll grab this guy, and we'll focus in on just one here. That's better. So here's our face. Here's our UV. So since these UV coordinates right here at the bottom, and they correlate to the vertices that are here at the bottom, or the base of these two polys, they're going to get 0 animation. So these guys aren't being animated. And then as we start to move up, so here's these next to these vertices, or should I say the bottom, they're getting less animation than the ones as we move up. Okay, so these UV coordinates are tied to these vertices, they're getting more animation, and then as we get all the way to the top, these UVs are tied to, let's see, this vertex, this vertex and this vertex of these two polygons, and they're getting the most animation. And so the way the leaves work is directly correlates to the UVs versus the vertices of the polygon. So that's why you need to use a shader that is written to do actually perform that animation. So a shader can animate vertices based on how it's written or whatever. So if you so right out of the box, if you can't write your own shader, you'll need to go in again and use nature, and then this tree soft occlusion leaves here. This will give you the ability to have your leaves animate. You could also write your own. So utilizing that same kind of structure, you could write your own shader that then animates the animates the leaves based off the wind magnitude and things like that. But again, if you want, you can just use that. So that'll wrap up this Q&A video here. I hope that helps. I hope that makes some sense here. And so as you can see, you can create your own trees in your 3D modeling package, and you can bring those in. The big thing to remember, again, like I said before, make sure your channels are zeroed. Go ahead and put your pivot point at the base of the tree. Combine your leaf mesh and your tree trunk mesh into one mesh, and then when you apply your shader here, make sure that you're using the tree soft occlusion leaves so that the leaves will also animate in the wind. Thanks a lot.